The most fun range specs to main in Season 2, patch 12.1. Hey guys, Petko here. Now, because you guys requested this video from the MIDI version, I decided, you know what, let me give you my top 3 recommendation of what I believe to be, pretty fun specs to main in next season. And most of those specs are something that you pretty much haven't played before last season, so they are rather new, or at least, slightly more designed, polished compared to last season. Let's dive in, talk about it, and give you my reasoning. One of the more fun range specs that I've had a pleasure of testing on PTR, which I believe it might get changed in the next couple of weeks, has been Void Scarred Devourer DH. Now, anything you remember about the spec Devourer from Season 1 with the collapsing star, yada yada yada, that is no longer the case. The best build currently in PTR is called Void Scarred melee build on Devourer DH, which pretty much never casts Collapsing Star. Now you spec to Collapsing Star because unfortunately there are several talents tied to the damage of it, even though you never press it, and your whole damage comes from Eradicate. That's it. All you gotta do is Void Ray, Eradicate. Void Ray, Eradicate, and you have to Void Blade on cooldown because you play Hungering Smash and you want to make sure to cast your The Hunt so you can get your damage stacks from Devouring Bite before your Metamorphosis, and you don't play Emptiness, which again, if people do not know, Emptiness is the bigger, stronger meta. Instead, you play Soul Glutton, which is the shorter meta, but it's more frequent. And every pack, sometimes twice per pack, you get to have major cooldowns, you get to have very good single target, because once again, they did buff the Reap damage quite, Reap and Cool got buffed significantly, so now it actually does quite decent damage. So you actually praise that also in AoE, and that's the whole loop. It's very mobile, and it's very, very fun to play because you're flying all the time, forward, backwards, etc. Now, at times, just like any Devourer DH build, you might feel annoyed because, once again, if you have to cancel Void Ray cast before it finishes, you don't get Eradicate. If you don't get Eradicate, you don't do good damage. So that can be a little bit frustrating, but at least you don't have to hustle with the Collapsing Star shit, because sometimes, if you remember last season, if you play Collapsing Star, you cast it, and let's say you have to move and stop the cast, it goes on cooldown. If it goes on cooldown, you lose your meta, and it gets really sad and mad. That is no longer the case because you don't play Collapsing Star. Is that going to change in the future? I don't know. But for now, it's one of the most fun specs to play on beta. I hope to be playing that on live servers too when season comes out. Alright, so my next recommendation is a spec that I hold very strong ties to, and even though I might be a little bit biased, I believe Elemental Shaman Farseer is playing extraordinarily well. Now, everything you know about Shaman as Elemental in Season 1, you can already forget about it, because next season, as it looks like right now, at least in a present moment, you are going to be playing Farseer both for 8 and for Mythic Plus, unless they overbuff Stormbringer a week before the season, who knows. But for now, Farseer is extremely fun because you are juggling fire spells and lightning spells simultaneously. Once again, you have to go through Chain Lightning and Earthquake, which is the bread and butter. But this time around, you have to also make sure to cast Lava Burst, especially if you are playing Purging Flames. For the people that do not know, if you're playing Voltic Blaze and Purging Flames, these two spells as a combination itself work very well, because the moment you have a Lava Surge and you cast Lava Surge or Lava Burst on any mob that has Voltic Blaze or Flame Shock, whatever you want to call it, you are firing 6 at most Lava Bursts both towards them, or as many mobs as you have Flame Shock on, up to 6. Now, this reminds me of a previous talent called Deeply Rooted Elements, DRE, which most of the older shamans here would recognize. That was a ton of fun. So that's kind of a similar playstyle. You Chain Lightning, you Earthquake, but at the same time you maintain Voltic Blaze on cooldown, you shoot Lava Bursts, even in AoE, even in cooldowns, and your Tier Set also allows you to have some free procs of your Elemental Blast or Earthquake, which sometimes you actually can cast back to back 3 Elemental Blast or 3 Earthquakes without spending any Maelstrom, because again, the tier set itself can carry the fun. I guess it depends how lucky you can get. The only feedback that I can actually recommend here for Ele Shaman going forward, and I hope Blizzard can hear me, is if they make the Earthquake to be a dot style, for example, instead of tanks getting damage while they standard Earthquake, every time you hit mobs with your Earthquake, it applies a dot, and the Earthquake itself can be used as utility. So for example, you know that knockdown effect can only work if your targets go inside the earthquake, and instead of them being aligned to tank on top of the earthquake, it just becomes a dot. So every time they move, it don't lose damage. That would be an insane quality of life update if they actually decide to do it. Because right now, as it says, you do rely on earthquake to do damage in AoE, and it kind of sucks if your tank runs away all the time. At least as early Shaman, I sometimes can get annoyed. Alright, and the most fun range that I had a pleasure of testing so far on PTR has been Archon Shadow Priest by far. Not even close. It's been so fun. There's several reasons why I believe it's so fun. First and foremost, why Archon? Well, there's one talent called Focus Outburst, which pretty much every time you have your Void form and you press Shadow Word Madness, you are firing off Void Volley, right? So Void Volley previously gets to be fired once you cast Tentacle Slam. You get to fire Void Volley, right? You have a button to press it. And if you guys haven't seen, they also reward you Void Storm, right? If as soon as you press your cooldowns, you have 3 charges of Void Volley, which you can press anytime you like. So that's actually pretty cool. If you guys didn't know that, that's happening next season. And my fun comes from Archon because every time you cast your Shadow Word Madness, which again is your spender, if you guys didn't notice, it casts like a massive amount of volleys around you, which is also pretty cool. On top of this, the appearation, once again, those shadowy figures appearing from you and going from the to the targets is also pretty cool. They also added a new talent, which is in my opinion, one of the coolest things they got added to Shadow Priest, called Shade Burst. Now, this Shade Burst are exploding once they get to be summoned and they travel to your target, which again it even further amplifies the nice fantasy of Shadow Priest, which I believe right now is to capture most people's attention. And I don't really talk about power because I already told you I focus mostly on fun whenever I choose to play my ults. But power-wise, Shadow Priest also doing quite well, which again is even further incentive for me to get to play this pick as an ult. So that's it. That's my rankings. Alright guys, that was my recommendation so far for the most fun range to main in patch 12.1 season 3. Now do keep in mind there are a couple weeks left before the patch comes out, and of course during those couple weeks they could decide to absolutely accordingly change the playstyle of the specs that I just told you. Is there a chance that'll happen? Very minimalistic, okay? I am pretty confident from now on you are probably going to be expecting only nerfs and buffs, and that's about it. But if anything changes, I will let you guys know. And once again, if you are interested or remotely concerned whether something is powerful or not, you can check out our tier list, which again, it's mostly based on power. That's all. Thank you for watching, and once again, I'll see you guys on stream very soon. Bye for now.